Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like your style when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Hello and welcome back to the Fastlian Collective, your go-to F1 recap show. We're back. It's me, Daniela. Unfortunately, no Brianna again. She cannot make it this week, but you will see her very, very soon. Do not fret. We have not kicked her out. She is still with us. She's just been a busy woman as usual. But yes, we are back at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. This was hard for me to watch this race because I was at Monza last year and just seeing the sun and how good the weather was, and I'm stuck in rainy, miserable Ireland makes me a bit upset. But today we're going to go team by team through the grid, unpack everything that's kind of happened. We've had some juicy storylines this weekend with McLaren and Max basically laughing at McLaren, as well as Fernando Alonso and his heartbreak of suspension failures. But first, before we get into everything, Daniela, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Yasmin. Yeah, had a good weekend, come home for the weekend. Today I went to Silverstone Museum, which is my favourite place in the whole wide world. Renewed my annual pass, so I'll be back multiple times throughout the year. And yeah, I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Wish I was at the Silverstone Museum today, but unfortunately no. Unfortunately not. Most of my day has been me spent trying to find my glasses. So if you're used to watching this podcast, I usually have a pair of glasses on. I do not have them. I don't know where they are. So if you see me squinting throughout this podcast, it's because I'm trying to read my notes and I can't really see them. So bear with me if I look pulling some strange faces. But let's just get into Monza, and let's start with Red Bull, the team that won this weekend, surprisingly. Max Verstappen was on the podium. I feel it's a bit weird saying that. I feel like we haven't seen him there for a hot minute. He won by nearly 19 seconds, took lead on lap 4 and set the fastest ever race pace in F1 history. I mean, goddamn. That's impressive. As usual, Max Verstappen was calm, clinical, and unstoppable. And then you had Yuki Tsunoda on the other hand. He is still trying to catch up to Max Verstappen. He was stuck in some midfield fights as usual, involved in a spat with Liam Lawson. Liam, man, you gotta stop bashing into people, man. Yes. So my first question to you, Daniela, is: do you think this was Max's best race of the season?
I'm going to say yes, only because we kind of got that glimpse back into Max Verstappen dominance. So not only did he go and win the race, he won it by almost 19 seconds. After kind of the first few laps, battling it out with the McLarens, he then went full steam ahead and we didn't really see him for the rest of the race. But as you said, he has broken the record for the fastest lap ever in F1 history at any track, in any car, which I'm actually surprised happened this year. I thought that would have happened a couple years ago when Max was like in his absolute prime, the most dominant driver, the fastest driver, full steam ahead, guns blazing. We didn't see him for every single race because he was just winning with no one even remotely close to him. So it kind of shocked me that it was this weekend that he took that. And then also, like as you said, we've not really seen him. He's not had that many appearances on the podium in comparison to previous years. He's also not really been on the top step that much this year either. So I was quite shocked to see him starting from pole. And then I kind of thought that if the McLarens were like on the ball, Max wouldn't win. And I thought, okay, if Piastri was starting second, I don't think that Max was going to win. That was my prediction. But ultimately, Piastri wasn't starting second. Lando was, and that made me be like, oh, I don't quite have enough faith in Lando on the start to kind of stop Max. Like if they're going to stop him from kind of getting off ahead, taking the lead and not looking back, then you need to have a good start. And we know Lando and his starts aren't the greatest. So I kind of thought, I don't know how this is going to go. And I feel like ultimately that kind of is what happened. They battled it out. But then as soon as Max was back in the front, he was gone. So I don't think I was necessarily expecting it. But I would say this is probably, in my opinion, his best race of the season. Is there another race for you that stands out for Max's performance this year, Yaz?
To be honest, I don't really think there's been a race this season we've had from Max Verstappen where I was like, wow, this is the best one. Until Monza, I think he's really, like, it was an impressive race from him. Again, because I wasn't expecting him to put the fastest lap time race of the season. Like, I wasn't expecting any of that. And like you mentioned, that would have been a milestone I thought Max would have achieved probably back in last year or the year before. Yeah, so it's a bit of a shock to me. I expected maybe one of the McLarens to hold that milestone now, but no, Max Verstappen still proving to us that he is a speedy man, even though the car is not what he wants for this season. He still has it. And speaking of speed, do you think if the Red Bull was better on their corner speed, because we know the McLarens are particularly good at that, do you think Max Verstappen would have had a chance this year to fight for the championship?
Possibly. I couldn't say for sure, but I do think that we know Max's capabilities. We know that he has been quite fortunate with the cars that he's had in recent years. So I'm going to say yes. I think that he would definitely be a stronger contender because right now it does look like the championship is just going to be between both McLaren drivers, and that's it really. So I think that, yeah, I would say that if Red Bull had been kind of given a little bit like dealt a different hand in terms of their car this year, a better hand, then I would say that, yeah, Max would be. Because I look at last year, we didn't know who was going to win. We didn't know if it's going to be Lando or Max until kind of towards the end of the second half of the season that we then knew Max had got it. But to begin with, it could have been Lando. It just so happened that Lando couldn't quite give it all couldn't give it all to win that championship, whereas Max could. And Max had done it before, multiple times. So I think, yeah, this year was not what Red Bull were expecting. It was not what they were hoping going into it. It's not what Max was probably hoping for. So I think the fact they've been able to turn it around this weekend shows how good of a driver Max is. And I think that that's going to make people appreciate his craft a little bit more. And I think that I just think that overall, like, we need to kind of look at how well they've done this weekend and kind of take that. We can't change what car they've got. Like, they've obviously made some upgrades and they've worked hard to turn it around a little bit the second half of the season, but we can't say if their car was like this, they'd definitely be doing that, because we don't know, and we just need to focus on kind of the car that they have right now and how they're kind of getting it to the max, and pun unintended there, but kind of getting the most out of the car.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely agree with you. But do you think Yuki Tsunoda is going to be feeling the pressure? Because he was P13 in Monza, and then you have your teammate that won the race and won the race by 19 seconds. You know, this isn't like a small, we just managed to overtake and get the win. This is a huge margin. Do you think Yuki Tsunoda is going to be, let's just say, a little bit panicky, a bit feeling the pressure going into Baku this next weekend?
Yeah, if I was Yuki, I'd be feeling the pressure. He's not really had a stand-up performance all season. He was obviously filled in for Liam Lawson after Liam getting kicked out after 2 races. And I wouldn't say that Yuki's results have kind of been any better than what Liam's were in that car. So I would say, yeah, the pressure's probably on. I think Red Bull are probably looking towards Hajar, and as we kind of spoke about in our last episode, that maybe Hajar kind of wants to stay away. I think he likes being a part of V-Carb and kind of being the number one driver of that team rather than kind of stepping into Red Bull knowing he's going to drop down to number 2 and have all of that pressure on you. But if I was Yuki, I would be concerned because I think I'm guessing he knows that they're looking elsewhere. But the one thing that Yuki has that Isaac doesn't have, or that maybe other drivers don't have, is that they don't have Honda backing him. So that kind of right now speaks a lot, especially in this modern day of motorsport. Sponsors, money, that plays a big factor into who has a seat and who doesn't have a seat. So I think that part of Yuki might be like, okay, things might be all right because I do have Honda beside me. But the other part of him might be like, but to really maintain the seat and to secure my spot in F1 at all next season, I need to be providing the results. And right now I'm not. And I won't lie, I don't think that's going to change. I think that Yuki will probably be staying somewhere between 15th and 10th in terms of finishing position after each race. I think that's where he's going to be. I don't see him getting a top 10 finish in the next couple of races. Unless something miraculous happens in Baku, I think that we can expect that most of his results the rest of the season will be between 15th and 10th. Would you agree, Yaz? Or do you think that Yuki is actually going to change things up and surprise us?
Unfortunately, I do agree with you. I think Yuki is going to be staying in that kind of rut of not doing the best performance-wise. And you know what? I can't blame the man when you are Max Verstappen's teammate. I mean, that says it all. I mean, even Nico Rosberg, who was on the feed that I was watching this weekend, was just kept repeating to the audience, Isaac Hadjar, do not go for the second seat at Red Bull. He's like, even Nico Rosberg's like, I wouldn't take that second seat. It's just such big shoes to fill. Not even with just trying to learn the car, learn the team. You've just got to, have the same kind of steam and energy that Max Verstappen does, and it can be a bit impossible sometimes. So I always feel bad for whoever is in that second seat, but especially Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, he's been somebody who I really wanted to see in that Red Bull seat, and he has wanted it for so long as well, and has worked so hard, and is an incredible driver. I just hate every time we see somebody in that second seat. You kind of forget all of that. You just see the bad performances. And I hope that the crowd doesn't forget that Yuki's had some good performances as well and has been a stellar driver, but we shall see. Hopefully, maybe in the next couple of years, well, the next year, we see some improvement and hopefully some better performances.
I have a question for you, Yaz.
Fire away.
How do you think Sergio Perez is feeling after seeing the results of both Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda in that Red Bull seat?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew you were going to ask me that. He is probably so smug. Like, he's like, yeah, and what about it? Yous were all wanting me out that seat forever, and at least I was keeping up with Max. Occasionally he did not. But yeah, I think Sergio probably feels pretty good. Definitely probably ups his ego a bit. And again, of course, we're going to be seeing him back on the grid next year. Which is going to be exciting stuff for him to be like racing alongside his ex-team. But yeah, I think Sergio, you know what? I slated you a lot on the previous podcast that we did across the pond about your performances. And I can't really say shit now. I can't really. So I give it to you. What about you, Daniela? What do you think Sergio is feeling right now?
I think the fact that he's secured a seat for next season, I think he's feeling like he's elated. He's like, yep. You all thought I was bad. You all hated me. But at least I won some races with Red Bull. At least I got some points. At least I was able to help them win some championships. Because right now, that's not the case. And I think that, especially knowing he's back in F1 next year, if that was me, I'd be like, yeah, see, I never left. In the words of Daniel Ricciardo, I never left. I would be very happy if I was Sergio Perez and I saw that the team that I was with, that everyone hated me for being at, is now not doing well. but was doing well when I was there. Well, I know that obviously it was partly down to the car and Max's performance, but I think there is obviously Checo was a key part of this, and he did help the team ultimately get championships, but we're not seeing the same. We all thought it was bad, like the gap between him and Max was bad, but the gap between like Yuki and Max is even worse. So we now know it's not just Checo, which I feel like that's the big takeaway here. He knew that it was the car. Like, he knew it wasn't just him. He knew that it was the second seat. But everyone was like, no, Checo's just bad. Checo can't do this. But now neither can Liam. Neither can Yuki. So what does that really say? Is it the driver or is it the second seat? Who knows?
Listen, the grass is not always greener on the other side, and I think we have definitely learned that this season. But moving on. Moving on to McLaren. Ooh, I don't really know what to say for McLaren this weekend. I guess we should just kind of get into the big drama that we had with McLaren, with their kind of swap kind of undercut, not undercut. So if you are completely unaware, Lando Norris was in P2 and he had quite the slow pit stop. It was 5.9 seconds, which was not good, as he was promised that he would not be undercut by Oscar Piastri, and that slow pit stop kind of caused Oscar Piastri to overtake him when Lando was coming out of the pit lane. Of course, team orders were being told to Oscar, and they had to swap back to Lando being in P2. So I'm just gonna Daniela, do you think this pit stop blunder cost Norris a real shot at the victory of P1?
I'm actually going to say no. I think the only way that Lando could have had a chance of P1, I think, is if Max pitted for softs. And the only way Max was going to do that was so he could get fastest lap. But now that you don't get awarded a point for fastest lap, but there wasn't really much point of him going for it, right? There's not the same incentive anymore. So I still think that even if, because Max was ahead throughout most of that race, like by quite a big margin. Lando had the entire race up until that point to catch Max, and he hadn't. And they thought, okay, we'll put him on softs. He might be able to get fastest lap. He might be able to carry, get that gap down. Regardless of the almost 6 seconds stop, he still wasn't making. He wasn't getting there. Even if we took 6 seconds off, he's still not getting there. He's still 13 seconds behind Max. I don't think it was going to happen, regardless. As I said, I think the only way it would have happened if Max also pitted, because I can't remember how many seconds it was. I want to say 23 seconds is the average to get through the pits. I can't remember. Might have been more than that. So, then that's when we would have seen that battle first between two of them. It didn't happen. And I actually blame the lack of having a point awarded for fastest lap. Because I feel like Max wants every point he can get right now because he is not where he wants to be in the championship. Lando also wants to get every point he can because he wants to close down that gap on his teammate so that he can win the championship. That fastest lap point, I think, would have determined a lot of that for this weekend. It would have given them both the incentive. Now, obviously, Lando's going to want to win because he's going to want to try and bring down that gap between him and Oscar in the championship. But Max is already winning. He didn't then need to go and get fastest lap because he's not going to get him an extra point. He was then going to jeopardise being in first place by going and changing his tyres when he knew that he was already 19 seconds ahead. So I don't think there was any opportunity for Lando to finish first this weekend, regardless of that pit stop and the drama that happened with McLaren swapping the drivers back and forth. Do I think it was right that they swapped them? No. I think that it should have been they should race it out, right? Like, McLaren made the mistake with the pit stop. You can't promise a driver anything. You can't say, right, we're going to go for the undercut here. We're going to do this plan. Because you never know it's going to work. There are so many variables that things could go wrong. You can't then promise and say you're going to come out ahead of your teammate. Because you don't know if that front tyre is going to go on properly. And you can't then expect Oscar to then slow down to let Lando come out of the pits in front of him. That's not how this works. Let them race. I thought we'd got past this from last year. It'd have been so much more interesting if we then saw them battling for second rather than just switching places. We're looking at two drivers who are first and second in the championship. We don't know who's going to win the championship yet. Give them these opportunities to race for it. That's the whole point of Formula One, right? So, I understand that McLaren's goal, their mind, is the Constructors' Championship. And I have heard people say that McLaren have said that if there's any problems on track, then they're kind of, until they've won the championship, they're going to have a few rules in place. Once they've won the Constructors' Championship, the drivers can do what they like. But I think we should just let the drivers do that now. It's how you can't just prioritize one driver and hope that they're going to be the one that wins the Drivers' Championship. When you've got two of the arguably the best drivers on the grid right now. I have a question for you, Yaz. Do you think this would have happened if it was the other way around? If Oscar was the one that went into the pits and had a slow pit stop, and they told him that they weren't going to let Lando get ahead and that he was going to come out of the pits ahead of Lando, and that ultimately didn't happen, and Lando got ahead, do you think the McLaren would tell them to switch positions?
Honestly, no. And I think because I guess McLaren, quote unquote, owe Lando Norris more because he's been in the team more. He's been in the team when they were practically nowhere. I get shivers thinking about what McLaren used to be like. And I don't want to accuse a team of favouritism because they have been very fair. But to kind of throw to Oscar Piastri on the team radio, we're going to do, team orders in Hungary. That was last year where you weren't competing for a world championship. The circumstances have completely changed. You cannot compare something to last year. You should wipe the slate clean and start again. Why are we bringing up old kind of remember in Hungary? And even Oscar in the radio was like, this doesn't really make sense, but I'm going to do it anyway. Which, you know what? Fair play to Oscar Piastri for just keeping the peace. Because again, there is still that gap, but every point counts. We don't know where we're going to be in the next couple of races. We're not going to know if Oscar Piastri is going to crash and DNF, or he's going to have a mechanical failure. And that's what irritates me is sometimes, things are out of your control. We didn't know that he was going to have that slow stop. And that was just a racing incident. That just happened. And McLaren trying to change things around and that team swap, they shouldn't have, because I think that was just, you know what, they could have been on the radio, listen, Lando, slow stop, we can't really do much about it. I don't understand this. It's too fair. It's too fair. Which is something I never thought I would say in Formula One. But McLaren were getting a lot of heat for this. I mean, Lando Norris was even booed on the podium. Do I think we should have booed him? No. No, I don't. But to throw it back to you, Daniela, how should McLaren manage these two ambitious drivers without fracturing the team? Do you think they've already kind of fractured the team mentality from this weekend? Do you think the next couple of races are going to be a bit hectic with, well, I want this to be fair, I want to do this because it's fair? Oh, do you think it's just all been a bit of a mess?
Yeah, I think it was the last episode I said that, I'm really impressed with McLaren. They've not gone back to McLaren rules and they're making it really work this season. Now maybe I jinxed it. Okay, I'll put my hands up. It's my fault, guys.
Daniela, come on.
So I'm disappointed, quite frankly, and I think obviously we've just gone into a whole rant about it, but I think that, they were going to be doing the right stuff. Like, they have been most of the year. And now, like, they make a mistake. Like, the problem is like, it's not like one of their drivers have made a mistake. It's not like Lando has, I don't know, like, Lando and Oscar battling, and I'm just going to use Lando as an example. He goes off the track and then gains an advantage, right? That's different, okay? Because you can be like, okay, give that place back. Like, you know the rules. This was a mistake made by McLaren. Now, obviously, like, I'm not trying to call out the pit stop guys and be like, you shouldn't have done that, because, like, everybody makes mistakes in their jobs, right? That ultimately is what happens. Sometimes you're going to have a slow pit stop. You're not going to know that the wheel's not on tight enough. These things happen. I get that. But now I feel like they're now trying to turn it into, like, the mistake of the team is now actually a mistake that the drivers... It felt like it was like them... They were trying to say that the drivers had done something wrong. Like, it became that Oscar shouldn't have carried on driving and gotten ahead of Lando. But it was the team that made the fault. And so that's when I get frustrated, because I'm like, but, like, it now just feels like you are putting out a bias here, because you are prioritising Lando, but making it seem like it was Oscar's fault. It had nothing to do with Oscar, and it had nothing to do with Lando. Like, and if you're in an incident like that, and I think they should just battle it out. Like, I think that then whoever... Because, like, if this was with another team, say Oscar was Charles Leclerc instead, and you had Lando Norris, you can't just say to Charles Leclerc, hey, we tried to do something here, but it didn't work, so we just slow stop. Can you just, like, hold back and give that position back to Lando? Because he would, if our pit stop had gone right, he would actually be ahead of you right now. That's not how it works. So why are you going to do that with your team? I think just let them race. That's what we're here for. It would have made it so much more interesting, especially when we're at this point in the championship where we don't know who's going to win, and the drivers are going to want to get as many points as possible. Like, I understand that Lando's been with McLaren for a long time, and maybe McLaren feel like they owe him something, but that's not how this works in F1, and it's not how it works in a wider space. I know this. I've been working for a few years, and I've come to realise that, like, you, like, as much as you want to, like, feel like you owe them and they owe you, that's not how it works. Like, you're a racing driver, just race. Like, I don't know why we need to bring all of this extra stuff, because McLaren ultimately are going to win that Constructors' Championship. Unless they both cars DNF every single race for the rest of the season, which I right now would say is very unlikely. Touch wood, because I'm slightly now terrified that I've spoken that into existence. But, like, just let them... Now it's all about the drivers. We know they've got the constructors. I'd be so shocked if they didn't get it. Just let them focus on the drivers and race. Ultimately, whatever happens in Abu Dhabi, one of your drivers is most guaranteed to win the championship. We just don't know which one yet. So I'm just disappointed that it came to this. I don't think Lando deserved booing. And before this, Gaz and I were going through the notes of the podcast, and I didn't know that Lando had been booed because I missed the podium. As I said, it had nothing to do with Lando. It was all about McLaren in that moment. It had nothing to do with him. Like, he's then not going to say, oh yeah, no, actually, like, let Oscar stay ahead. He's not going to say that, because he wants to close that gap in the championship. He wants those points. Those points are crucial to him right now, just as much as they are to Oscar. It's McLaren that are the ones that have gotten themselves into this trouble. It was the same last year. Would I have preferred Oscar to be ahead? Yes, because I'm an Oscar Piastri fan. But McLaren dealt these cards. They played it in the way they have. Lando is second on the podium. He should not have been booed. End of. Like, I don't know why we're bringing booing into this culture, because it never used to really be in F1 that much. I know it is in football and other sports. We don't need it in F1. That's not, like, why we're here. As I said, it had nothing to do with Lando. It was all about McLaren in that moment. Sorry for my rant, Yaz, but I had to be said, guys. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. I mean, we are down to the wire now of McLaren. We are, there's not a load of races left, and it would both be Lando and Oscar's first ever World Championship win. So let them work for it. Let them fight for it. Team orders, playing it fair, okay. But when we're starting to do team orders to basically things that are out of your control, when you're like, okay, right, you need to swap. It's just, I can say it again and again and again, but it's ridiculous. And I really hope McLaren kind of do a debrief and look at this and go, you know what? We understand the outrage. We understand why people are so annoyed, and hopefully they just let them race. They let them, whatever happens, happens. And we shall see in Baku if they keep to that. Because I'm already so stressed with like this championship. Like, oh, he's gonna win. Oh my goodness, there's only this amount of points. So just, McLaren, stay out of it, please. I want to enjoy hard racing. Thank you very much. So moving on from McLaren, we will leave that there and hopefully they improve for the next race. Let's talk about Ferrari. Let's talk about the Tifosi. Let's talk about the boys in red. Let's start with Charles Leclerc. Surprisingly, finished P4. Way better than our last race in Zandvoort, which we will not talk about. P4 for Charles Leclerc. He clung to Piastri very, very early on in the opening laps, and he gave the home fans some hope, although he wasn't on the podium. It's still a good result for Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton, he finished at P6 after fighting from P10. He was quite aggressive. A lot of the commentary was saying this was kind of like old school Lewis Hamilton. Like, he really had his spark back being with the Tifosi. A lot of aggressive wheel-to-wheel duels that we had. So my questions to you, Daniela. Although this was better than Zandvoort, their previous race result, do you think the Tifosi were still disappointed in Ferrari's result?
If we compare last year to this year, absolutely. But if we compare the season as a whole, I would say no. Like, I went into this weekend to be like, okay, I'm not expecting a double podium. I'm not expecting a Ferrari win. I'll be happy if we get one car in the top 5. And that's what we got. And I was impressed with that, and I was happy with that. Yesterday I was dressed in my full Ferrari gear because you have to. When it is Monza, it's the rite of passage. So even though I am a McLaren and Williams girl at heart, I did have to push that aside and focus on Ferrari. I think that when it comes to Monza, there is a whole different vibe for all Ferrari drivers. And it's something that I noticed specifically with Charles Leclerc over the last few years. He gets like this whole different energy that makes him better on track. Like, the pressure doesn't get to him in the same way that it does in Monaco. It gives him the extra edge, and then he comes out with a better result. Like, I'm not expecting necessarily Baku, he's going to get another top 5 finish. I was expecting it in Monza because I just know that when it comes to Monza, there is just this whole new energy that keeps him going. Those fans are so excited. They literally bleed red, and I know that they do anyway because that's how the human body works, but also they are Ferrari fans. They're the Tifosi. They are, every single aspect of them bleeds red, bleeds Ferrari. And that gives him the drive to continue. He doesn't have the same pressure that he does when it is a home race in Monaco. And I also think that got extended onto Lewis Hamilton. I think he understood what it was like to be a Ferrari driver in that moment. That's what people have been dreaming of. That's what he's been dreaming of. And he got to feel it in that moment. And I think that, again, pushed him to go the extra mile. And as you said, bring out that aggressive nature that old school Hamilton had, that we haven't maybe seen for the last couple of seasons. But we got to see it this weekend. And I think that I was just really impressed with him this weekend. But I also kind of, as I said, I was expecting it. Like, there is just something about the Monza magic that brings out the best in these Ferrari drivers. And it happened again. Now, I was kind of hoping when Oscar and Charles were battling it out, I thought, okay, maybe Charles might get this edge and hopefully he'll finish on the podium. Didn't happen, but the fact that he was fighting for podium positions shows what a big step they've had, especially from Zandvoort, double DNF, an awful weekend that the pair of them just wanted to write off. And then we go to Monza, it's just looking so much more positive, double points. Now, it does pain me that I'm getting excited over the fact that we're talking about double points and we're not talking about a 1-2 finish here, but the progression that they're making, we are seeing slight improvement. I know that Zandvoort was not one to talk about, but aside from that, I do think they are kind of starting, which is kind of sad to say at the end of the season, on an upward trajectory, and I hope that continues the rest of the season, and I have faith that it will. I think that Zandvoort was one that we, I think that gives them a new clean slate. They draw a line under that, and then they started again from Monza, and that's a place to start from. So I think for them, the second half of the season, it properly has started from Monza, and I think that they will go on to improve, and that they just needed that Monza magic. They needed the Tifosi, and the Tifosi, it works in both ways. It's a double transaction here. You've got the Tifosi giving them all their love and support, and then they're also getting results back. So I'm happy with Ferrari's performance this weekend. It would have been nice to have had at least one of them on the podium, but compared to Zandvoort, a million times better.
Yeah, Monza is a special place. I was in Monza last year, and I definitely picked a good year to go because we had Charles Leclerc on the podium. I mean, the Ferraris, the Tifosi was just incredible. That crowd is just something else. And there's something that I've only really just realized when we were talking. I have the cup that I got in Monza. I'm actually drinking my water out of. This was not filled with water when I was at Monza. It was filled with beer. So yeah, I'm just getting kind of all giddy and feeling about just talking about Monza. I mean, anyone listening to this has not been or is thinking, maybe I'll go to Monza next year, definitely go. It is a brilliant track. And I mean, come on, we're in Italy. It's gorgeous. But I'm getting a bit sidetracked. A question I have for you, Daniela, that you slightly touched on there, and it is, was Leclerc's hard racing a sign of frustration towards the team and the car, or was it just the pressure from the Italian crowd?
I think he wanted to put on a show. I think in that moment he forgets about the championship, and it's all just about him and the Tifosi and making them proud. And I think that's what he did. I think there probably is some frustration with it. Ferrari is a difficult team to work with because they're so stuck in their ways. In their mind, it's still 1950. We've come a long way since then. They just haven't quite realised it. And so their communication is not good. They want to work in the way that Ferrari works, and it's Ferrari's way or no way, which doesn't work in modern day F1. And I could see why Charles would be frustrated, especially after his DNF last race. Coming into this, you're going to want to prove something, not only to yourself, but to the fans that are watching. And I think that he did. And I think he just put aside all of that. I think to get his best results, he sometimes does need that little bit of frustration. I think that drives him a bit more. But I do think for the most part, he blocked that off. And it was all about this one race, Ferrari's home race, the Tifosi. He just wanted to focus on that. He wanted to bring this car back in one piece and hopefully in the points and on the cusp of a podium, which was exactly that. I think going into next 2 races, he's going to continue to get frustrated with Ferrari, rightly so. I don't know how he continues to go back to that team every year because he has a lot more strength than I do, because I would be so annoyed right now if I was him. But yeah, he definitely put on a show, especially with Oscar. And that was one of my favourite parts of the whole race. His battle with Oscar, for me, was one of those moments where I'm like, this is what I love. Hardcore racing. This is it. And being a Ferrari driver as well, fighting against the driver that is at the top of the championship standings, I thought was just utter perfection. I was like, this is it. This is the moment. And I was sat with my brother's girlfriend watching it, and I was like, this is what I love. This is F1. And I hope that we can see more of this. Because I hate the fact that I say it. I'm always like, I want to see more of this. I want to see more of this. Because we never see it that often, despite that literally being what racing is. Wheel-to-wheel battles, but we don't see it very often. make it make sense. Yaz, will we see more wheel-to-wheel action in the coming races? And do you think that Leclerc really put on a show for the Tifosi, or was it also partly for himself?
I think we will see more wheel action going forward. I feel like usually when we get to the end of the season, people want to show off. People want to say, listen, to any other teams out there, look at the talent I got. With that comes some risks, of course. We can get some more crashes, more incidents, more penalties, especially when you look at likes of Ferrari who are really trying to get their points. And then even with McLaren, I'm sure we might come across some more incidents following on.
Do you think that Leclerc was doing this for himself or for the Tifosi?
Yeah, I think probably a mixture. I think, of course, with the Tifosi there, I mean, you can't ignore them. Like, come on. Like, he's definitely wanting to put on a show. And especially after their last race, which was Zandvoort, they want to be like, hey, we're still trying, guys. We're still trying to put on a performance for you. But definitely inside as well, Charles Leclerc will be definitely doing this for himself. I mean, that man has gone through the ringer with Ferrari. He needs some good points. It's hard to watch. It really is. I really hope next year is a better year for Ferrari. I know we don't know much about what's going to be happening next year, but Daniela, do you think there will be any hope for Ferrari in the next coming years? Because we talk about it, I swear to God, every time we do a podcast, we talk about the hope for Ferrari for the next coming years.
I don't know. It all just depends on the regulation changes and how Ferrari cope, but also how do the rest of the teams on the grid cope? Like, even if Ferrari got a million times better, they've still got to compete with what will now be 10 other teams on the grid. So, I don't know. I really want to say that these regulation changes are going to do wonders for Ferrari, but we actually have no idea. And that makes me nervous. But in my words that I use a lot on this podcast, I'm going to remain optimistic and that the 2026 regulation change will make Ferrari stronger.
Guys, we're going to be making merch of Let's Be Optimistic. No, we're not. We're not. But I think, honestly, we should get a t-shirt made for you, Daniela, that just says, let's remain optimistic. Because we've said it so much. So, moving on to Mercedes. George Russell, P5, maximised the car. He had quite a clean race. And then we had Kimi Antonelli on the other hand. He had a 5-second penalty for erratic racing, and he also was forcing Albon quite wide, but he finished outside the points. Unfortunately, Kimi Antonelli, kind of a mixed bag for Mercedes this weekend. And this is not related to the race, but a question that I actually was supposed to ask last week and I forgot to ask. Is George Russell, underrated for how consistent he is? Because I never see a lot of people talk about George Russell, but he's always up there in the points.
The reason I think we don't hear or see much of George in terms of in the public eye and in terms of the media is because we never really see much of the coverage of him. And I realised that this weekend. We only saw glimpses of him when he kind of was trying to get involved in the Leclerc-Piastri battle. But for the rest of the race, I don't think I saw him once. And then that made me I actually asked that question to myself. Is George Russell underrated? And I was like, no, because we just don't see him. And it was a point I was actually going to bring to the episode. So it's actually really funny that you've asked me this question. Because I just felt like we don't see him. So it's so hard to say if a driver's underrated or not. But I think the fact that he's being consistent and we're not seeing it shows that he isn't underrated because no one's talking about him. But then again, I think because he is just staying consistent, he's not really doing anything massively outstanding to go in the broadcast, either way, negative or positive. But I think that right now, that's what Mercedes need. They need consistency, and George is bringing that, especially in the second half of the season or kind of, as I've said in the last episode, since Imola, Kimi's dropped off. Like, we need that number one driver to stay consistent, and that's exactly what George is doing. So I would say he is a little bit underrated. I think that prior to this season, I'd have gone, no, I feel like he's a little bit overhyped. But I think this year he's actually made me change my opinion of him just because of how consistent he's been in comparison to Kimi. And I think that, Kimi's he's trying his best. He is a rookie. But I don't think he's where everyone thought he was. If we compare the first few races of the season to now, he's really starting to struggle. He's making very rookie mistakes. I don't know exactly when they say erratic racing. I didn't see much of him to know exactly what he was doing that was erratic, apart from pushing Albon wide. So it'd be interesting to kind of get a glimpse into that and to see exactly what it is that he was doing. I did see that, I'm pretty sure I saw that he did get a black and white flag for track limits. But aside from that, I don't really recall much happening. But maybe that's just the broadcasts aren't really showing much of Mercedes at the moment, aside from when, Kimi Antonelli crashed into Charles Leclerc. We're not going to talk about that. Yeah, so that's my thoughts. Yaz, are you on the same wavelength as me? Or do you understand what Kimi was doing that was erratic? And is George Russell where you were expecting him to be? And has your opinion either stayed the same or changed about him this year?
And when it comes to Kimi, I didn't see exactly what was going on. Again, there wasn't much coverage of the Mercedes at all, really, unless there was some sort of incident. I saw the black and white flags for Kimi Antonelli, so I kind of thought maybe he just keeps kind of veering off the track, I guess, that they've given him this penalty, but I didn't see anything on the broadcast, so I can't really say. But Kimi seems to be on a bit of a downward trajectory at the minute, which is a bit worrying. He just seems to not have good races in Italian countries, which is a bit worrying as an Italian. Kimi. He did not do well in Imola, and obviously in Monza he has not done well really at all. Again, this is still his rookie year, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but hopefully next year he will be a lot more stronger, a lot more competitive. And when it comes to George Russell, I love how we were on the same wavelength of, is George Russell underrated? Maybe. He's another driver that I think Mercedes really needs at the minute, especially with Kimi being his performances so up and down, especially when it's kind of going down at the minute. He seems to be bringing those consistent points, bringing them into the constructors, and yeah, I think we need to kind of give George Russell a bit of less harsh criticism. I mean, the thing that I keep seeing on social media is oh, he's boring. Why would you want to be a fan of George Russell? But at the end of the day, it's not really about his personality. It's about what he does on track. So, I'm going to stop, being so harsh on George Russell. I think he's really a solid driver and has proven that he's a team leader for Mercedes. Do you think well, this is kind of pretty obvious, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you think George Russell is a clear team leader for Mercedes? And do you think Kimi is going to probably learn a lot from George Russell?
Yes, I think that he's definitely led the team in a way that Mercedes needed him to. They were losing Lewis. They needed George to step up. And George already has kind of that nature about him of being able to kind of take on that leadership role and mentor another driver. I think that's what worked so well with him at Williams. He knew what the team needed from him and kind of vice versa, but was also able to push the team in the direction it needed to go because he has those kind of more leadership skills. And he was able to bring those into Mercedes. And for the first seasons, he obviously didn't really need to do much because, he was racing against 7-time world champion who had won a lot of his championships at that team. So I knew going into this year that Kimi would be lucky to have someone like George aside him. And that, I think, has, especially in those first few rounds, I think that has proven that he has done really well because he's had George beside him. Obviously, Kimi's a great driver in his own right. I don't want to take that away from him at all. I'm not saying that Kimi's success is only because of having George part of the team, but I do think that having a figure like George, that kind of older brother advice giver, is kind of what has gotten the team to where they are right now this year. And so I'm hoping that Kimi is learning a lot from him, and I think that especially when he's making these rookie mistakes, having someone like George to go to and be like, right, a few years ago, maybe not a few, what was it, like 2018, 19 he came in, 2019? So it's been like 6 years. You were once me. What would you say to yourself if you were in this situation? Like, how can I learn from these mistakes? What can I be doing better? Like, these are my weaker areas. How can I work on this? Like, having someone like George. Now, obviously, George isn't going to want to spill all of his secrets to Kimi because his biggest competitor is Kimi, but he is going to want what's best for the team, and that is ultimately going to be by helping Kimi out so that they can both be consistent in the top 10 and hopefully one day fight for another championship. Obviously, right now that's not happening, but like, that's where we are. And I think that George is someone who has been very beneficial to Mercedes. And maybe they didn't know that when he first started out at Williams, but it's definitely, I think, helped having him throughout the years and build him up to then be able to be in this position where he can then help Kimi.
Yeah, again, totally agree with you. George Russell, apologies for me underrating you, to be honest. And he definitely is a pillar of strength, to be dramatic, for Mercedes. So moving on to Williams, Alex Albon had a strong race weekend. He was in P7, finished in P7, and had strong points earned for Williams. Carlos Sainz, on the other hand, not the best when he had contact with Ollie Behrman. That led to Behrman's 10-second penalty. Of course, this compromised Carlos's race and Behrman's race as well. But there's been a lot of talk about whether it should have been the other way round and if Carlos Sainz should have got this penalty instead. So, Daniela, should Sainz have received that 10-second penalty or Behrman? The Sky Sports broadcast that I watched seemed to all be leading that the FIA did the wrong thing and that it should have been Sainz's penalty.
I, at first, didn't really know. I was confused. I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. But then I kind of thought, once I saw multiple angles, I actually think it was a racing incident. And so and Sky Sports originally said that. They said, oh, I think this is a racing incident. And then they kind of, when it was announced that Behrman got the penalty, that's when they kind of started to sway towards, should it have been Sainz? I don't think either of them needed a penalty because going into it, they both were making Sainz was ahead and was making that corner, and Behrman came along the inside. But Behrman didn't know, it just felt like it. Yeah, I feel like it wasn't really one where you could say that was definitely this driver. So I was actually really shocked when they gave him a 10-second time penalty, and the fact that it was 10 seconds. I was expecting 5, mostly because both the drivers were fine and continued on with their race. They weren't both in the wall. I just was shocked that it was that much. Especially when some of the other incidences that occurred this weekend was only 5. What are your thoughts, Jazz? Because I feel like this might be where we disagree, because I obviously view it as a racing incident, and I think I have a feeling you're going to say that you think that Sainz should have gotten the penalty. And do you think 10 seconds is too much?
I think 10 seconds was too much. Again, I was thinking 5 seconds. I think, sure, 10 seconds if Behrman took out Carlos Sainz. Okay, kind of get that. But I've rewatched this incident a couple times. I think if we were to blame anyone, Carlos Sainz, but I kind of view it as a racing incident. I was a bit confused.
Wow, we're the same again.
Yeah. Again, me and Daniela seem to have the same opinion on most things. We don't talk about well, we talk about what topics we're going to talk about on the podcast, but we never go into our opinions on things because we like to leave it for the podcast.
Yeah.
So this was not planned. We did not know that we had the same opinion, but we seem to always have the same opinion. But yeah, I think it was more of a racing incident because it is not clear cut. I think if to give such a harsh penalty to Ollie, I just think it's unfair. I think they were both, again, pretty close together, but no, I couldn't. I kept going back and forth, and even before the podcast, I was looking at clips, and I was like, ugh.
The only
reason
that I think they could have gotten away with giving Ollie it is because Carlos was ahead. But even then, I just feel like it wasn't one of the, like, there was no malice behind it. I don't think Carlos saw that Ollie was there. I don't think Ollie thought that was the route that Carlos was going to take. I thought he thought, oh, he's going wider, I can get down the inside and get this corner that way. I just don't think that either driver was in the wrong. Like, they both thought they were both doing the right thing.
I see it the opposite way. I see
Oh.
because Carlos was ahead, and in my opinion, he kind of closed the door on Ollie. I think it should have been him to get it because there was nowhere for Ollie Behrman to go.
Interesting.
You see?
Ooh.
You see?
Yeah, I get what you mean, but then I think I'm trying to see what the FIA would have seen to have made it
Yeah.
Ollie's fault, which the only way I can think of is that Carlos was ahead, so it was his corner. That means it was Ollie's fault. Like, that's all I can think of in my mind. But
Yeah.
I don't know. FIA, can you
It's
please
difficult.
explain what was your reasoning behind this, please? And thank you.
Yeah, it was a difficult incident to kind of say who was at fault. Of course, they kind of both were in their races. Again, 10-second time penalty for Ollie Behrman, and Carlos, again, spinning, losing time. So a bit unfortunate. Carlos Sainz hasn't really had much luck this season, really. But hopefully next year he comes back stronger with Williams. But talk about Alex Albon. He had, again, an incredible race this weekend. Do you think he'll be looking to change teams for next season, even though he has a contract signed till 2026? Just because of how well he's been performing, do you think any team will have his eye on him?
You know what? Earlier, I saw a post on Williams' Instagram, and it was photos of Alex, and they were talking about how he had signed, when he initially signed, and it was like, it said something about like, oh, look at all these memories together. And at first I thought, oh my God, is he leaving? Like, that's what my moment. I was like, wait, hold on a second. So I'm like looking to see if there was like a thank you post on the Williams Instagram. And I was like, no, I've just completely got into the stick. Like, they're just being like, oh, this day, however many years ago, Alex signed with the team. So I don't know, but that just threw me off. So when you just asked me this question, I'm like, that's really weird timing, because it was just today that I thought that he'd signed with someone else and he hadn't. I think for now he's going to stay. I just can't imagine another team right now knocking on his door, and I don't know if there were a team, I don't know who it would be. Do you have a team in mind, Yaz?
Honestly, no. I kind of just threw this question out because Alex has been improving and improving. Each race, he's getting points. He's always one of the top performers, I think, on the grid for the midfield. And with that constant improvement, I just thought maybe, teams might have a little bit of an eye on him. But I don't see him going to any other team soon, unless Williams' car next year is absolute just crap. Then maybe he'll probably think about leaving because he's been with Williams for so long now. But no, I don't have any team in mind. So yeah, we shall see. Alex Albon, well done, as usual, doing incredibly. But moving on to Haas, again, we're getting through these teams now, rightly. Esteban Ocon, 5-second time penalty for forcing Stroll wide. Quite the messy midfield battle. And then, of course, you had Ollie Behrman, as we talked about. So, my question to you, Daniela, is Ocon the stability that Haas wanted? Or do you think he's another driver that just kind of is nowhere at the minute.
He is a little bit nowhere, but I have a slightly controversial opinion. Well, I don't know if it is that controversial. I don't think that in that instant between him and Stroll that he was in the wrong. I think that Stroll was in the wrong. And we then had a really similar incident then. I think it was with Yuki and Liam. And neither of them got penalised for it. And then we were like, oh, like, then that should have been Yuki got penalised. Like, I can't remember which way around it was, but we were basically like just saying, like, isn't that interesting that Ocon's got a penalty for this and a similar incident happened. Neither driver got penalised for it. But the reason that I think that he was in the wrong, that he was not in the wrong, is because Stroll was on the inside and was in, like, there was no gap. Like, he had nowhere to go. And he tried to make a move that just didn't work. And then Ocon was ahead. Like, in every angle that I saw of this, Ocon was well ahead. He didn't close the gap. There just wasn't a gap there. And so then Stroll had to go off. But then it was like, well, he had nowhere to go. So I don't feel like Ocon was in the wrong. I think Stroll was. And then you had that really similar incident. I think it was between Yuki and Liam. And the same thing happened. But not like it wasn't really investigated. Like, nothing happened. So I just find it interesting because I feel like a lot of the time Ocon ends up in this position where he's just given penalties so frequently. And sometimes I'm like, does he really deserve it? Like, do the FIA have a vendetta against Esteban Ocon? Because why does he constantly get penalties? And does he always deserve them? Yes. Do you agree with that statement? Does he always deserve the penalties that he's given? And who do you think was in the wrong in that instant?
You know, now you mention it, Esteban does get a lot of penalties. And I've never thought about it that way. And there has been times I've thought, I don't think you really deserve this one. But this is the FIA. I mean, we talk about so much on this podcast so this incident, okay, 5-second time penalty, but then you go to that similar incident with Yuki and Liam, and there's no time penalty. And of course, we don't have all the information that the FIA has. We only see what we see on our TVs and on the broadcast that we are given. But I feel like a lot of times, I don't know, like, some people are lenient, some people aren't. FIA people to certain events and incidents, and it can be a bit frustrating sometimes as a fan, especially if, say, your favourite driver is the one that keeps getting penalised. I'm sure some Ocon fans are not really happy with the FIA. And when it comes to this incident, I don't know. I think I need to rewatch it a good couple times before I make a proper decision. Again, we had so many incidents this race that they're kind of all merging into one for me. But yeah, I think when you're in a battle with Stroll, it's kind of probably Stroll's fault. But again, sorry, Stroll fans, I apologise if any of you are listening or out there. Speaking of Stroll, I think we should move on to Aston Martin because it was not their weekend at all. Let's go. Fernando Alonso retired in lap 25 for suspension failure because he's going up that little curb and just there goes his suspension. It was like made of, I swear, like butter. His suspension just cracked and it was gone. So disappointed for Fernando Alonso. And then Lance Stroll again, midfield, just having some battles again with Ocon. So my question to you is the reliability of the Aston Martin car, is that their biggest weakness, you think, from throughout this season?
That paired with having Lance Stroll as their driver, yes. Sorry, Lance Stroll fans and Lance Stroll himself. I think that, you've got a two-time world champion with you. Fernando Alonso knows what he's doing. He is the oldest driver and the longest-serving driver in the sport. He is capable of driving that car and getting good results. But they have had some unreliability issues. The suspension braking, I honestly thought he had a puncture. I was really confused. And it wasn't until I saw another angle of him as he was coming into the pits that I was like, no, that's suspension. And then they said it on the broadcast, and I was like, I knew it. But like, at first I didn't know it because I honestly thought, how did that, like, I didn't think it was going to snap that easily. And then it did. And that shocked me. So I was a bit disappointed that it was something so small that caused him to DNF. And then obviously having Lance Stroll as their second driver, he doesn't really bring out the most outstanding results. But I do have to say, and we have covered this a little bit in previous episodes, that Lance has been ahead of Alonso in the championship. So maybe I'm wrong. Okay, maybe I am. I'll put my hands up and say it. Maybe Lance is better than I give him because he is ahead of Alonso. But I do think that a lot of Alonso's problems this year haven't been because of him as a driver. I think it's been because of the car. But hey, maybe that's just because I am a Fernando Alonso fan. And if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that the remaining optimistic catchphrase that I have brought to the podcast originally came from my love for Fernando Alonso and the hope that he was going to win a race in 2022 or 2023. I can't remember.
I think it was
2023
maybe.
Yeah, I wasn't with the podcast in 2022. What am I talking about? 2023. It was all about me saying I was remaining optimistic with Fernando Alonso. So maybe I just have a Fernando Alonso bias.
And you know what? Fair enough. I mean, who hates that man? I don't think anyone does. It's hard to watch Fernando Alonso at the minute. It's just incident after incident, angry video message after angry video message. And I think, to be honest, Fernando Alonso has been trying to keep optimistic with the thoughts of 2026. You know, we've got Adrian Newey on board. We've got this huge big factory and that Aston Martin have. And hopefully he hangs on and just thinks next year will be the year. But my thing is, what if it's not? Like, will we see Fernando Alonso just kind of kick the bucket and just, you know, retire? Or do you think he will stay? Do you think that Alonso can stay motivated with these setbacks and bring it for next year? Or am I just being optimistic?
If Adrian Newey wasn't part of the team for next year, I would say that Fernando Alonso would probably be thinking about retirement. However, knowing that Adrian Newey is working on their car and that 2026 is going to be a big year, not only for them but for every team on the grid, I would be like, okay, I'll just see how 2026 goes. Because that could change things for them, especially having Adrian Newey involved. So that's my thoughts. I think he will save the team.
Let's hope. Let's all hope and pray that Fernando will make a comeback and win a championship. Again, remaining optimistic. But moving on to Visa Cash App Red Bull, whatever the heck that team name is. I'm sick of it. Let's talk about Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. Liam Lawson, man. I'm not even going to talk about incident because we know there's an incident. We know there's a collision. We've talked about it previously. Do you think Lawson's aggression is becoming too much of a problem? Because every time we do a race recap, we're talking about Lawson being aggressive at some point.
Yes, I touched on this a bit last week of like, Liam is making a lot of enemies. And I know that in Formula 1, you're not there to make friends. But it's getting to the point where other drivers are actually fed up of racing against him. I was such an advocate to get Liam into F1. I thought he was a brilliant driver in F2. He still is the driver who's made my all-time favourite overtake. But it's getting to a point now where it's just becoming frustrating for everyone, like even the viewers. I'm like, Liam, come on, what are you doing? Like, you were doing well when you came in originally with AlphaTauri and you were filling in for Daniel Ricciardo and everyone was so impressed with you. What happened to that guy? Because that guy wasn't overly aggressive. That guy wasn't pissing off every driver. That guy knew how to race. Who are you now? What are you trying to do? What's going on? Why are you not putting in the results and putting in the same mentality that you did a few years ago? I just kind of feel like we need to look at Liam Lawson and work out what's going on. Liam, what is it? Why have we changed this up? Because the aggression thing is not working. you either have it or you don't. Sometimes the aggression thing works. Max Verstappen is an example. You have to get it right, because when Max was really, really aggressive in his younger career, like when he first entered Formula One, it didn't work. He pulled it back a bit and then it started to work. I feel like maybe that's I think that's what Liam thinks. To be a Red Bull driver, you need to be aggressive. Yes, you do, but not to the point where it ruins your race and everybody else's. I think he's trying to emulate Max's career, and it's not working. You can't be another driver. You can't be somebody else. You just need to be you. And the you that you were when you first entered F1 in AlphaTauri, it worked. Let's go back to that. Why are you trying something different that isn't working and you're sticking with it? Drivers are fed up racing against you. The drivers come on the team radio and they say, not him again. I saw him behind me and I was like, not him again. They know that when they race against you, it's going to end in disaster. That is not good enough. You need to change your approach. I want to keep defending you. All season long, I've been trying to defend you, but I can't anymore, Liam, because it's not working. Let's try something else. Yes, I know you want to be fighting, and I know you've not had the best year because you got kicked out of Red Bull, but constantly attacking other teammates in a dangerous way, like not like aggression in terms of trying to make an overtake that works, like it's actually becoming to the point where other drivers know that it's going to end in disaster. That's not the reputation you should be upholding. And I know that he comes in and he says, I'm not here to make friends. I get that. No one's here to make friends. They're here to win championships. But they're also not here to make enemies. And that's exactly what you're doing. It's you against the rest of the grid. And right now, the rest of the grid are in an agreement that you are not nice to drive with. What does that say about you? That's not going to make you look good for other teams. That's not going to make you look good for other sponsors. I feel like he needs to rethink this. Yaz, are you on the same? Is Liam just too aggressive for his own good?
Liam is too aggressive, I think, at the minute. Because like you mentioned, every time there is an incident, drivers on the radio again, this guy again, he's doing this again, he's too aggressive, blah, 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 blah. And this early in his Formula One career, if he keeps this up, he's not going to have a seat. And that's the disappointing thing, because I think Liam Lawson is an incredible driver, and maybe you can say, he's still annoyed and still bitter from losing that Red Bull seat. I definitely think Liam should have been given more chances, not just 2 races then you're out. Who can do anything with just 2 races? But yeah, I don't like where Liam is heading, and I really hope that next year he can get his head around everything that's happened and hopefully bring a better performance. But moving on again, let's talk about Hadjar. There's been so much talk of Hadjar going to Red Bull. Do you think Hadjar would want that step up?
I don't think he thinks he's ready for it, and I personally don't think he's ready for it. Not after what we've seen that's happened with Liam and Yuki and Sergio Perez. I just think that he needs a few more years, and I can see why Red Bull are interested. He's massively proven himself. He's definitely Rookie of the Year. He has worked so incredibly hard. If we look at Australia to now, his improvement has been incredible, absolutely amazing. But I just don't think he's quite there, and I think he knows that too, and I think he is actually a little bit tentative about going to Red Bull. Whenever it's brought up in conversation, he doesn't know how to tackle it. He doesn't know how, when he's being asked all of these questions, he doesn't know what to say, because you can't just sit there and say, I don't want to go to Red Bull. That's not going to look good on you as a driver, right? But I think that's how I honestly think that he doesn't feel like he's ready, and I don't think he wants to go. I think he's enjoying being at V-Carb. He's learning a lot. He's kind of fitting into that little bit more of that number one driver, because Liam is not giving the results needed. This weekend, again, great outstanding performance. He started from pit lane, or like in 19th, and then went on to finish 10th. Like, he got points. I think it was 10th he finished. It was either 9th or 10th. And so he came home with points after starting so far down. he was also the only driver to make it into Q3 for like this like first part of the season up until this weekend. Or no, or was it get out in Q1? I can't remember what the stat was. But anyway, either way, he's been really consistent in his qualifying performances. He then has one weekend where he has a blip in qualifying, but then still brings it back and gets it into the points. Not many other drivers are doing that at the moment. So I honestly get why Red Bull are interested in him, but I can also see why he'd want to turn that down when he's seen what's happened to all of these previous Red Bull drivers.
Yeah, Hadjar, definitely one to watch out for. But I think it's too soon. And we've seen this happen a lot with Red Bull. They bring drivers that have good results and just shove them in that Red Bull seat, and we know what happens. I mean, tail is old as time. So Hadjar, please just say no. Please just say no if you're asked, because I can't see another rookie just be their talent be just dampened on. Like, I just can't do it. So Hadjar, love you. Don't take the seat. I feel like we need to start a hashtag Hadjar don't take the seat. The only other kind of notable thing that has really happened that we didn't touch on is Nico Hülkenberg did not start. Unfortunately, it was because of a power unit issue. I mean, he did a formation lap and then was brought right back into pits, so quite an unfortunate end to his race that didn't even start. But that is it. That has been the Monza Grand Prix, another Monza Grand Prix down. And yeah, next up is Azerbaijan. Quite exciting, quite a high-speed track. Will definitely bring some strategy gambles, lots of chaos. And we can't wait to talk all about the Baku race. So again, thank you for listening. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, leave us a review. Tell us what you thought of the episode. Please be nice. And yeah, we will see you in the fast lane. Bye-bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you, glad you came too.